imagine a coin, okay? A coin has heads and tails, right? I liken conflict to having either a constructive side or a destructive side.
Conflict really hurts your health, not only physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The stress of it all increases your heart rate a lot of times, and that can lead to a heart attack or a stroke.
And today, let's spotlight Dr. Cheryl. She is our guest today, Dr. Cheryl Okoli. She's a visionary healthcare leader with over 20 years experience. She holds a doctorate in health administration from A.T. Still University, and she serves on the board of ACHE Canada. Dr. Okoli is the founder of Shalom, Eagle's Wings, where she focuses on consultation, advocacy, and empowerment. She addresses the root cause of work challenges, and she promotes proactive measures in leadership, workforce development, partnerships, organizational culture, and financial practices to enhance her clients' outcomes and satisfaction. Dr. Cheryl, as I like to call her, also runs Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreat, offering innovative solutions to employee health. So all of you that are out there listening that run a corporation, call her right now. As a global mentor and coach, she shares her expertise on the Dancing Negotiator with Dr. Cheryl Okoli, DHA, and on the Win-Win Women's platform. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Cheryl Okoli, and let's start dancing.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, when I got a chance to talk to you in our pre-show interview, when you said that you were going to talk about conflict resolution, okay, that was good. And then you told me that you were going to show us how you use dance to resolve conflict. So this should just be the most interesting show we've had, because I don't know where we're going to go, but I'm going to let you lead us. That's a good dance term. But I just want to start out is, can you explain the concept of conflict and what are some of the common reasons why conflicts arise in the workplace and in personal relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Now, I like the way you ask that question and phrase that question, because I'm a proponent of always defining or describing what a term means, okay? So when I use the word conflict, it's a borrowed term. My description is going to be borrowed, yet I totally resonate with it. So an author by the name of Gallo said that conflict, okay, is either a disagreement in aims or values within oneself or interpersonally that has the potential to cause harm or actually causes harm. If you noticed, that definition said either within oneself or an interpersonal component to it, because sometimes people focus just on the interpersonal conflict, forgetting that we sometimes have internal conflicts as well. So when you asked me what are some of the sources, I believe you said, or the reasons for conflict, well, it's varied. It could be interpersonal in terms of personality clashes. In the workplace, it could be related to, let's say, for example, budgetary constraints, for instance. It could be policies that are not clear. It's subject to interpretation. It could be, when we come to interpersonal, it could be envy. People don't want to hear this, but sometimes people are envious of you, jealous of you, that might lead to conflict. But on a broader scale, we've talked a little bit about how budgetary constraints can lead to conflict within departments or intra-department within a department, right? So the key is this. I always say conflict is not bad. The outcomes determines whether that disagreement in aims or goals is negative. So by that, I always liken to say, imagine a coin, okay? A coin has heads and tails, right? I liken conflict to having either a constructive side or a destructive side. So it's the outcome that determines where the conflict is bad or negative, for instance, okay? And with conflict, you definitely don't want to spiral down into destructive conflicts. So what are examples of destructive conflict, for instance? In the workplace, it could be turnovers. So let's say, for example, negative turnovers. Why classify negative turnovers? Because sometimes there could be employees who've been in a particular department and they're like, you know what? I have reached the maximum I can reach. I've acquired all the skills I can. I've served much I can. It's time for me to go elsewhere to grow and flourish. That's a positive sort of turnover. But a negative turnover is, let's say, for example, the organizational culture is so terrible, detrimental, the moral distress, or there is poor morale. People are like, you know what, I'm done with this. Leadership doesn't listen. I need to get out of here. Or if it's affecting their personal lives at home, right? So yeah, so those are some examples of conflict. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but these are some examples, for instance.
Well, and I think we hear the worst of conflict when you
Mhm.
hear of somebody walking into their workplace and shooting it up and killing all their fellow colleagues.
Yeah.
So it really does have some very, very serious life-ending consequences if
Mhm.
we don't know how to become aware of a conflict brewing in any situation, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so that example you just cited is extremely extreme, extremely extreme. That's a very drastic and detrimental. But you know what? I like to put on the hat of root cause analysis. So just running with what you just shared, if someone were to come in and kill people, I like to dig and find out what exactly made that person tick and flip. There was something. I don't justify it by any means. No one should justify that. But there was, obviously, the person was not normal in terms of maybe mentally. You know, people always say that employees are your most precious assets. But sadly, employees are not treated very well. So some employees might be disgruntled. So again, with that example you gave, I'm just playing with you there. What if that employee was disgruntled? What if that employee was bullied and
Sure.
harassed in the workplace? What if they have mental health issues? Because sometimes when you read on the news or watching the news, individuals like that, sometimes it's either maybe indeed they have some mental health issues, they've been bullied, isolated, or maybe some gender identity issues, that finally they're like, you know what, it's better for me to get out of this world and in the process take out some people. With conflict, you may not necessarily agree, that's the key, but you can understand where someone's coming from. So again, that example is extremely drastic. I don't agree with it. I can maybe try to understand what made them tick, but it doesn't justify such an action. So that's the key with conflict. We try to understand where people are coming from. We don't necessarily have to agree with them. The key is always to have a mutually acceptable resolution. That's the key. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's what we strive for. And there are different steps to hopefully get into that.
So it's interesting because as children, we're taught so many things about life, but nobody teaches us actually how to deal with conflict. You know, it's also, you know, some children aren't taught how to cook or grow food, you know, or how to take care of the environment. I'm talking from personal experience, right? Because I grew up on a farm, but I find a lot of people, there's lots of things that they don't know about that. But when it comes to conflict, and we all have conflict in our family, right? Sibling rivalry is a big thing,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, parental abuse sometimes, you know, just all kinds of you know, awful, crazy things going on. But that's all conflict that has a root cause. And how do we become aware of that root cause before it really takes hold and the person ends up putting out a contract on, you know, on a family member's life, or they come and, some sort of murder suicide or something. I know I'm getting very, dark on this, but I think that, we have to shock some people and say, these things happen, and that's a result of us not knowing how to deal with conflict. Because like I said at the beginning of the show, I do my very best to avoid it at all times. I would rather be just happy and healthy and talking to people that are just on the same vibe as I am, and the same vibration, that they're aligned with me and they're having a good day. And when they're not, I just want to avoid them, because I will get into it with you. I'll stand up for myself, right?
Okay.
So if somebody's bullying me, I'll stand up and say, that's not happening.
Okay, let's break that down. You've raised up quite a few nuggets that require to actually dig into and delve right into. So let's start with family of origins. You talked about most of us weren't taught conflict resolution skills as children. So that's referring to the family of origin, okay? And you mentioned that you didn't basically spell it out, but you did allude to the fact you prefer to avoid conflict. So you raise a very good point. So a group of authors by the name of Thomas Kilman have 5 main strategies of dealing with conflict. I like to say there are about 2 A's and 3 C's. So there's one that's accommodation, there's avoidance, there's compromise, there's collaboration, and competition. So according to the research, the best form is collaboration. You mentioned avoidance. Now, is that to say that we should never adopt the avoidance technique? No, there is a time and place to avoid. So for example, if you have somebody who is extremely aggressive, and you have a hard time broaching that individual, there is a time and place to avoid them. But avoidance forever is not the way to go. One needs to be equipped with skills, either personally or be strategic to bring someone else who could help them navigate this aggressive party. Now, something else you mentioned in the family. If someone is bullying me, you got to speak up and all that. Did you know, and not many people know this, so I mentioned the Tom and Kilman model, which were those 5 I mentioned. So I repeat: avoidance, accommodation, collaboration, competition, and compromise. Another group of authors thought and really reflected on these 5 strategies and found that in the family, believe it or not, there are 3 more conflict resolution strategies, albeit destructive. These group of authors are called Baumel and Tripp. It sounds like tribe, but it's actually Tripp. The 3 additional conflict resolution strategies they detected are blocking, exclusion, and sabotage. Those are very destructive, aren't they? And if we reflect in our workplaces, if I were to ask a show of hands right now, okay, how many of you in your workplaces, either now or at one point in time, have either been, I don't like to use the word victim, I like to say recipient, because to me, recipient is more empowering than victim. But anyway, if I were to ask a show of hands or put in the chat, how many of you have witnessed blocking, sabotage, or exclusion? So you might be like, what's blocking? Blocking could be maybe blocking you from getting that promotion. Exclusion could be like a group of you are going out for lunch or supper or some team building activity. And you later hear, oh, we all met, but you weren't invited. That is the worst. It is the worst, but that happens, right?
That really hits your,
Yes, this is quite, I need to pause here for a second to say something. This topic can be very difficult. And I know some people who might either right now being a victim, I prefer recipient, of anything I'm mentioning right now. My intent is not to conjure up such poignant feelings within you. My intent is to, number one, recognize what you're experiencing is real. And hopefully you'll be empowered with some tools after we're done today to move on, to be that positive change agent, to make a change there. And not just for yourself, to empower others, okay?
So Dr. Cheryl, you do this as the Dancing Negotiator. So tell us about this concept, how it came around, and we're going to do some dancing tonight, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you lead the show for now. And if we need to bring in the panelists right now, we can do that, or you just say when and we're going to.
Okay, so let me tell people a little bit about the Dancing Negotiator, and I'm going to change my background so you understand a little bit what I mean by that. Now, the Dancing Negotiator is a play on words. Why do I say that? I promised myself years ago that if ever I got a chance to empower people to deal with conflict effectively and efficiently, I'll do something about it. Why? Because I myself was a recipient of destructive conflict. I went through I was bullied. People made a mountain out of a molehill. And I said, my goodness, conflict is not necessarily bad. There are constructive aspects. So cut a long story short, I want to empower, not just locally. I'm Canadian, by the way, in case people are wondering. I didn't just want it to stop within Canada, but globally. An organization found my website and approached me and asked me, if ever you're given this opportunity to be a show host, what topic would you want to focus on? Right away, it was a no-brainer. I wanted every topic I talked about to have some strategies dealing with conflict resolution. So the Dancing Negotiator is a show whereby I basically bring in my health administration and clinical experience in healthcare. And I address different themes that are talked about in healthcare and provide useful conflict strategies or quality improvement strategies to deal with them. So the Dancing Negotiator is a play on words. Why? Conflict resolution is like a dance. I believe we'll all agree, right?
Yep.
Negotiation is one of the strategies of conflict resolution. I love the dance. I'm an avid dancer. My style is ballroom, Latin, and interpretive. So in keeping with me loving to dance, being passionate about conflict resolution, I said, what are 5 strategies, original mnemonics in conflict resolution that I can leave with people that they'll never forget the 5 steps of conflict resolution? Hence, my 5 A's of conflict resolution came to being, which I'll talk you through right now. And in time, I was like, just bring dance into it. You love to dance. You're the Dancing Negotiator. You got to show some dancing, right? So what are they? The 5 A's of conflict resolution. These are proprietary, but the 5A, and now I'm going to guide you through the steps. I'll guide you what they are, the steps, and then we're going to have music to it. Okay, is that good?
You got it.
Okay, so the 5A is assess. You ask, what does that mean exactly? Now, I'm going to describe each of these A's from both an interpersonal perspective, because conflict to me, you can look at it either from an interpersonal, value, task, process, or systems. These 5 A's, you can apply to any one of those criteria I mentioned. Again, either interpersonal, value conflicts, tasks, process, or systems. The first A is assess. What does that mean? It means when you have a complex situation, you want to assess if it's worth addressing. If you say yes, the next part of the assessing is it the right time to assess? Now, some of you, I'm sure, have heard of the whole HALT mnemonic. Have you? H as in if you're hungry, A if you're angry, L if you're lonely, T if you're tired. HALT. If you're any one of those, stop. That's part of the assessing. Don't address a conflict situation if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Okay. So if you say yes, I've assessed and this conflict issue related to this personality clash or related to this process issue where people are so confused, we need to address it. Next, ascertain the right time to address it. The second A is approach. Okay. Approach means you have to address that issue. You either approach it you alone or you bring someone with you. Now, if you were to bring someone with you, now it all depends on the nature of your workplace. Some might be unionized, right? And some are not. So if there's a power imbalance, so let's say, for example, it's your boss or superior, who is this person you're having a hard time seeing eye to eye, there's this issue, but you don't know how to address. You've tried, or you're just afraid, you can approach your union and they can be that support person with you. Now, some people are like, I don't want to go the path of the union. I'm just going to bring a colleague with me. Well, that may or may not be the best course of action, but if you choose to do that, let your boss or whoever it is know. By bringing someone with you, you're not trying to gang up with them. And by the way, all these principles applies to the family setting as well. If you have a sibling or a relative or whoever, you can bring someone with you. Okay. But the key is when you're bringing someone, it's not I'm trying to gang up against you. No, because once you come with that feelings and demeanor, they're going to put a barrier right away. Okay. So first you assess, second you approach, third you analyze. What does that mean? You brainstorm together. What are possible solutions? What's their positions? What's their interest? Just because, okay, now I'm just going to tie in an example based on what Ms. Shaw talked about in childhood again. So let's say, for example, and this is a classic example that's used in psychology and different disciplines. Let's say you have a bunch of kids and there's one orange. Let's say there are two children, one orange. And one person says, I want that orange. The other one's like, I want it. And they're struggling for it. No one's willing to give it up. Now, let's say someone like me or mediator comes in. What they need to ask is, why do you, let's say, John, why do you want the orange? John would be like, you know what? I want the orange juice. And then he's like, you, Jane, why do you want the orange? She's like, I need the rind to make cake or something like that. So right there, this mediator took the time to find out what their position and their interest is, why they wanted it. And by ascertaining one wants it for oranges, the other one wants the rind. Right there is an easy solution. Peel off the rinds of the bag, give it to Jane, give the juice to John. But the point is you need to take the time to ask the questions. Okay? So that's an example of brainstorming, okay? Now, so you assess, approach, analyze, third, you assert. This is the time where you speak your mind respectfully, politely, and the other person speaks their mind respectfully and politely, okay? And then the last A is agree to disagree. What does that mean? As much as we love to resolve conflict, as much as collaboration is the key, as much as we want to have a win-win, sometimes that won't happen. There comes a point in time where you have to agree to disagree. And believe it or not, agree to disagree is a bona fide strategy of conflict resolution. The problem is when it has to do with values, for instance, right? So for example, that controversial issue, to be vaccinated, not vaccinated. I don't want to be vaccinated based on my spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, or personal convictions. So for those who are conscientious objectors, it had to come to a point of agree to disagree initially, because a person with the convictions are like, you know what, this is my lifestyle, I cannot budge. The work people are like, you know what, this is our policy, you must be. So that definitely created lots of angst. They had to agree to disagree. Some, of course, took up a legal suit and all of that. But my point in sharing that is, agree to disagree is a bona fide strategy for a season. Sadly, one party loses or seemingly loses, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
the 5 A's of conflict resolution is not necessarily linear. It could be circular, but those are the steps that I like to go. So now, what's the dance? Before we start the dance, I'm going to show you the moves.
Okay, Dr. Cheryl, what do you need us to do?
Okay.
Let's do it.
So first and foremost, I'm going to show you the steps real quickly. You can stand up for this, but first and foremost, the first A is to
assess.
Yes.
Assess.
and this is how to remember it. Now you're going to forget it.
Step.
The most famous, my famous fictional detective is Sherlock Holmes. So imagine you have a magnifying glass. So you assess. Imagine you're holding it and you're looking. Okay, so that's assess. So the beats of the music is 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, clap. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 2. Okay. Now approach. Remember that breaststroke for a swimmer. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 sets of each. Analyze. This is going to be a funky one. Put your hands together. Pray that conflict goes well, and you're going to go like a wave. There we go. That's analyze.
You're coordinated. Follow
practice. Imagine you're asserting. You remember how the teachers back in the day had a long pointer for the blackboards. Now, just for the dance, imagine one hand is on their hips, the other hand is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, certain. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So 2 sets of that. And the agree to disagree is a handshake. So you really, in conflict resolution, you extend either a literal handshake or metaphorical handshake. The onus is on the other person to receive it or not. So the dance move is 1, 2, 3, forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, backwards. If you feel comfortable, you can do both sides, like the robot. Okay. So from the top, so it's going to be assess. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, clap. 3, 4, clap. 2 sets of that. Then you want to approach like a swimmer, breaststroke. And then you want to analyze, assert. 1, 2, 3, 4, clap. Please never point at anyone in a conflict situation, I beg you. It will not go well with you. Before we start, the music, by the way, the music we're going to be dancing to, I got permission, is by a young gentleman by the name of Daniel Jang. And it's an instrumental cover of the song called Havana, Havana. Good. Here we go. There, that's the 5 A's of conflict resolution mnemonic. So always ask yourself, before I get into anything, is it worth approaching? Is it worth addressing? And then take those steps.
Dr. Cheryl, that was awesome. So Dr. Roni, I would love for you to jump in and just talk about some of the health aspects of how being in conflict can hurt your health.
It hurts your health all the time. I'll never forget the time we had a publisher come to my retreat, and I didn't know this, Cheryl, what you're talking about, back then. I just knew, I thought, I was naive, that people came to the health retreat because they had health conditions and they really wanted to lose 21 pounds in 21 days. But then I found out that there was a large percentage of people that was in conflict resolution. They needed it so bad. They were in conflict. And I was like an airhead. I remember this one lady said, well, I'm here because I didn't know if I should kill myself or kill my husband. So I'm here and I'm looking around, hoping that nobody heard that but me. And so no one heard that but me. And so I'm thinking, well, we're on a 21-pound, 21-day retreat. So I'm just gonna kind of like pretend she didn't say that. But I know better today. But back then, I realized that so many people was in conflict and in pain, and it really destroys your health. At the end of the day, that the retreat for her was a lifesaver because she needed to say that over and over and again. And man, did she tell it to everybody at the retreat. Everybody, she needed to say that, but she needed a lot more. And I wish that I knew what you just presented to us back then, because we could have saved her in a different kind of a way. She didn't need to go through so many years of pain. And I totally believe in that one when you said we agreed to disagree. But sometimes even when they do that, it still hurts their heart because they're agreeing to disagree, but they really feel the pain of the emotional abuse that they're living with, because conflict really hurts your health, not only physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The stress of it all increases your heart rate a lot of times, and that can lead to a heart attack or a stroke. There has been a lot of science articles out there saying that a lot of these conflicts that happen in the workplace and in the home and even in the church, it's amazing how much goes on in the church. I cannot tell you. That's a whole nother session. But the depression and the anxiety is there in the church, and they don't know how to deal with the conflict. So a lot of it is to pretend that it's not happening and let me just put on a smile. Remember that smiling depression we talked about, and pretend that it's not happening. But it is happening, and all the headaches and the stomach aches that they feel and the brain fog, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they can't talk about what you are talking about, Cheryl. They just can't do it unless they have someone like you to teach them these skills. It destroys your immune system. It literally weakens your immune system. I don't know if you know, but I know lots of people that they're always sick. I'll never forget the lady, we call her the lady in the window. When I was younger, she used to always be in the window watching the kids play, but she never would come out and play. And I heard that she just was depressed. And then we found out later the reason why she was depressed is because she lived in the society of do as I say and not as I do. And I can't even explain to you what that meant. It was horrific. And so she really ended up dying of a heart attack. But the signs were there. The poor sleeping was there, the nightmares were there, the inflammation all over her body was there, the irritability, the depression, and the fact that she kicked the dog every day. And I heard one time that she almost killed her dog, but it was all of these signs. But today we live in this world where somebody like you, Cheryl, can teach this in an environment, in a workplace environment, hopefully in the school environment. And man, one day we'll have it in the church environment, because the church hides these things, and you think it's just a wonderful, beautiful place where everyone sings and love each other, but behind the scene there's so much conflict. So I just commend you. I just love this, and I think we should all just dance. You should send everybody this music and we should just all dance, because that's what I do when I feel bad. I dance. I do the gospel dance. So thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty about the dance too is it's a stress reliever, and the endorphins are produced, the good neurotransmitters, right? So that's one thing, like with such a topic like this, you interweave dance. And I saw someone ask in the chat, could we do this during conflict? I'm like, why not? If anything, it's almost going to reset the person you're having a conflict with. They'll be like, what on earth are you doing? You're like, give me a second. And then, it's a challenge to people, actually. Let's challenge each other. When they're in a conflict, if you can't feel comfortable, do it. And you teach them some skills in the process too. So anyway.
Yes, yeah, that's so true. It's beautiful. It's all just dance to a conflict. I mean, that's just
That's
one thing that we can do. There's many more, but at least if we have that, when we feel like there's nothing else to do, just think of Cheryl and just dance.
Because you know the whole saying, you either laugh or you cry.
Yeah.
So just laugh and dance. Yeah, but no, coming back to what you did say though, conflict in the workplace, the health effects that it can have, very much so holistically, your mental, physical, social, cultural, like social, for instance, when there's so much conflict, you feel like you're all alone. Some people become suicidal, that isolated. Like when you mentioned someone kicking the dog, I can't believe it's inspired down to that, the misplaced aggression, like it's very sad, actually, quite sad.
Yeah.
Ray, do you find conflict is a big part of your practice? People coming to you with conflict issues?
Yes, I actually appreciate the practicality of how to approach conflict in what Dr. Cheryl have taught here. One of the things that stood out for me is actually when you mentioned about analysis. And I teach my client to actually approach from becoming responsible of their own thoughts, of how they feel about a situation before reacting, but come from a place of, is this coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of love? So I always bring into the awareness of how can we make it simple for us to understand what are we repressing or avoiding inside before reacting to an external factor or a person or a being that's somehow unconsciously might be triggering us. And I would bring into the energetics of this process. Why I love it, because dance it invokes, like you said, invokes endorphins, and it increases the energy of Kundalini. So it brings up that fun hormones, that happy hormones, which is our birthright. And on the throat chakra, which is the seat of our sense of worthiness, or our ability to speak our truth, somehow it gets blocked when we don't really process or unconsciously project the things that we repress or avoid. So dancing is a great tool to actually practice the language of our body, which is our emotion. And I love dancing as well, so I deeply resonate with this. I host a workshop, I call it Energy in Motion, because it's where movement meets mindfulness. So it's really bringing in that energy to speak your truth through the language of your body, which is your emotion. So I appreciate this so much. It actually reaffirms some concepts that I'm actually guiding my clients as well. Say, for example, for their relationship, when they go heal and grow, sometimes there are parts of their being that no longer aligns to who they were or who they operate with before. So this is such a great way to actually bring in the practicality of it and really make it simple and understand how they can approach it better. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And if anyone wants more detail, I actually have a book where I go into much more details talking about the 5 A's of conflict resolution mnemonic, the different topics you might experience in the healthcare field. There's a 2021 revised version. It's available on Amazon, USA, Canada, Singapore, the list goes on. But yeah, you can find out more there if anyone's interested.
And before we leave, Dr. Cheryl Okoli, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was so much fun. I saw Debbie said that was really fun. I have to go and find that. That was wonderful and fun, Debbie Castro said. So thank you so much. And do you have some final words for the listening audience?
Yes. My final words are these: conflict is not always bad. But if you find yourself in a situation that's conflictual, ask yourself, what side of the coin would you like it to fall once you leave that room? Do you want it to fall on the constructive side or on the destructive side? That's it.
This has been Real Talk, where we are keeping it real to heal. Good night, everyone.